So I think we're live. Check. I'll take a look in the comments. Let me know if you can hear me, how this sounds. Yeah, let me see with the output levels. Change those up just a little bit. Let me know how it sounds. If you're here, let me double check. All right, let's try this. All right. Cool. All right, sounds like you can hear me. That's a good thing. Hey everybody, just wanted to, as I've been doing a couple times, I did this last weekend, a couple live streams. It's a way to not only do some stuff and get some content out there and do that, but it's also a way to answer questions, show you guys around. If you have questions about anything that I'm doing or how I'm doing it, walk through a little bit about setup. Today's going to be a little different because it's about the studio. Let's see, about, I want to say 6 months ago, I think I posted something that we were going to be moving houses and I was going to be building a dedicated studio space for the first time, instead of just having like a corner of a basement TV room being the studio space. So so this is the space. So we're all moved in, all settled in. And I hadn't done this yet, even though we've been here for a couple months, because I wanted to wait until everything was finished and perfect and cabled right and all that stuff so it would look nice. And then I realized, as I'm sure many of you have, that it's never finished. It's never right. It's never cabled correctly. I had everything looking beautiful, and then I tore something apart because I'm going to be selling some gear so that I can have, space to actually work on the stuff that I really enjoy the most, the stuff that's the most useful for me. So that's what this is all about. So let's see here. Good afternoon. Hey, Rolf. Good to see you. Rolf, a fellow Colorado dude that's here. So, so the idea is to show you around the space. So this is a part of our finished basement that we had that didn't used to have a wall over there. So we kind of closed that wall off and walled off a section of the basement so it could be this dedicated space. And I have everything set up in a way that is, works for me. And one thing that I've learned through this process and through the last few years of trying to get everything fixed and designed and set up this way is that there's no correct way to do it. Like it's all about whatever works for you. And I went back and forth about how I wanted to set this up, how I wanted the, where I wanted the gear to be, how I wanted it to operate and be connected and all of that stuff. And so this was kind of what I came up with. It works the best for me. Basically, I have things set up in stations that I can kind of hang out at and work at independently. If I get an idea, I can just work in that one individual area, or everything is also connected all together so that I can then expand on that idea if I want to. So there's a work area over on that side, which has my favorite synths. It has some mono synths, a poly synth, and then it also has a drum machine. So everything in that area all kind of works together. And I think there was a buzz. I just corrected something with my audio, which I think should sound a bit better now. Yeah. So anyway, I think that's it. Anyway. Trying to fix this to get this to sound normal over here, which it doesn't always, but that should be a bit better like that. All right, so a workstation area over there. So if I've got an idea and I want to kind of hammer it out on that, I've got a similar thing here on this side, which I've just kind of switched to. So let's see. We've got, there we go. now we've got this the way it's supposed to be. Sorry, just getting used to this software and how to kind of move stuff around. So anyway, we've got a work area over on that side. There's another work area on the desk here, and then another one that's just below this camera, which is the newest one that I kind of set up and got going and got organized just recently in the last week. So this way you will get to see a little bit about how I use it. And that's kind of the point of all of this. So I'll show you using some of the different camera angles here. This right here is kind of the main, it's my live set that I perform out live with. So it's a good way for me to be able to practice having, you know, everything together connected the way it's going to be connected for a show, and being able to basically practice, because all of my sets are improvised. And so this way I can practice that improvisation so I can get better at the instruments, is I guess the whole idea. Then there's this area, which is the one I was pointing out over on the other side. Some of my favorite synths, the ones that are super inspirational to me, the ones that kind of give me the ideas and help me kind of flesh out the ideas. And so those ones, I kind of put them together so that it's easy for me to do, you know, a melody, a lead, a bass line, pads, drums, all of that in one area without having to move around too much. And then if I have an idea on something that's in a different piece of gear, then I'll move over to that. And then in another area over here, this is the one that I just set up recently. I'll take that picture out of there so you can see everything. So this area has the Percons, a couple of desktop synths down here below, and a modular case that is, it's my old travel case, which is a bit bigger than the one I'm using now. And it has the modules that I kind of swap in and out of my travel case. So it's kind of a mishmash of different things. This was not set up to be anything in particular. It's kind of like what else that I have that I'm not using in my travel case at the moment. So this will always be kind of like a Frankenstein's monster of a machine that will definitely evolve over time. And then I didn't have a mixer for this, so it's running through a mixer up here on top, which is just a Behringer, what is it, a Xenix 1002, really super basic mixer. I think they're like $100, just to get the sound out. And then up on top of this, which you can't see out of the view, is a Korg MS-20 Mini. So that gives me kind of an area over here, again, that can be kind of a creative area where the other areas that I have kind of spread around are kind of set up as their own creative areas. And then just right over here is where I have my my desk. It's a standing desk. It can go up and down, and that's where I have everything run into Ableton, so I can record that way, or I can do post-production, or I can do recording in the box if I want, but everything's run into there. And I'll talk a little bit in a minute about how it's run into there. So yeah, so if you have any questions, definitely put them in the chat. Happy to answer about any of this stuff, but we'll kind of walk through about how everything's connected and all that stuff just to show you. This is also where I do video editing and other work. So that's all kind of in this station. So anyway, that's how it's set up as stations. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move this camera just a little bit so I can walk through just a bit how everything's set up. So this is, move this out of the way. This is the area that I was just showing you with the MS-20 up on the top. I was waiting to have everything all kind of set and ready with cables looking beautiful and all that stuff, but I figured it was better to kind of show the reality of, you know, working and have this set up. So if you look, everything here is cabled in a really ugly way for right now because I'm about to get that all set up. I just tore this area apart and redid it. It used to look like the cabling over on this side, which is all nicely bundled together and going into the mixer as it should. The other side will get that way, but I needed it to be a little bit more practical first. So everything from an audio standpoint is all run into the Tascam Model 24. You can see everything has its own inputs, and so I can either play around without Ableton on. I can still have this going, and it can still kind of, you know, play live. I can actually record into that onto an SD card as well. So if I want to be totally outside the box, I can. But it also acts as a USB interface, and it goes in through my computer into Ableton, which I have set up over here with a template, so that every one of the synths that you see around the room each has their own audio channel. And so that way, when it comes time to record a session or record something in particular, I can just hit record and everything's already multi-tracked in on this template. So I don't have to set up the connections and MIDI and USB and audio and all that stuff. It's already all set up and connected together. Now, from a MIDI standpoint, down here below is the Conductive Labs MRCC, which is a really cool MIDI router. And so you have all of your sources for MIDI on one side, and then all your destinations on the other side. So right now I have it set up so that the Syntact, which is on my desk, is set to control basically everything else. And so because of that, I also have the Syntact set up as the master clock for Ableton. So when we come up here to the Syntact on the desk, if I hit play on this, it pushes play on everything. So you see the sequencers are all working, Ableton's moving, those sequencers are working, and those sequencers are working. So basically everything is connected through from a clock standpoint from here. So if I'm sitting at the desk and I've got an idea, I can just start from here. I can actually send MIDI out from any of the 12 MIDI channels on here to any of the gear as well. So if I plunk out an idea on here and I like the bass, but I want to hear it on the Sub 37, I can just set that channel to send, and it will send over to the Sub 37 and start recording into Ableton. So that way, basically everything is set up so that it removes the most possible amount of friction to be able to play and make music. Oops. I am not hearing myself. Let's see. Oh, I think my headphone batteries may have just run out. So I will keep going, but you get to see kind of the, the realities of working in the studio. So the battery wears out. I'm just gonna put it to charge up a little bit here. Probably should have done that before I started, right? So anyway, like I said, everything's set up here so it can be used. You know, it's not, I had set things up or thought to set things up originally as kind of like, you know, certain types of synths over here, certain types of synths over here, and whatever. And I just realized that was more like a display. It wasn't really something that was functional for the way I work. I like, when I get an idea, I like to just be able to kind of get it out as quickly as possible and kind of hammer out that idea. So now everything's set up so that every station has a drum machine. Every station has, you know, monosynths, it has polysynths, it has, like, each station has all of those different things, but they're all kind of unique on their own. And so it allows me to be able to work in such a way that I can just get stuff kind of hammered out, which is, you know, for me, the most important, because I think as everybody, we never have enough time to spend making the music that we love to make. Because whether it's, you know, a day job, family, kids, all of that stuff, you want to be able to, when you have that, you know, kind of magic hour or whatever to be able to do something, you want to be able to just sit down and switch everything on and do it, rather than having to, like, okay, now I'm going to cable, now I'm going to MIDI route, now I'm going to audio route, now I'm going to figure out, you know, settings and parameters, and by that time you're just not feeling very creative. And so this is a way to kind of knock out all the creativity stuff all at once. So I'm gonna check on the chat here and see. Audio staticky. That might be too much gain on my mic. Let me see if I can fix that. Turn that down just a little bit and see if that helps. Let me know if that helps. Let's see. Does the MRCC handle clock separately, or are you just sending clock via MIDI? So the MRCC, there's a couple different ways it can be set up. It can be a MIDI router, which is, I mean, it is a MIDI router. That's kind of what the job is. So it can be sending MIDI from any kind of one machine to any other machine or multiple machines. So it's kind of acts like a MIDI matrix almost. Actually it is a MIDI matrix, it has one on the screen. Then as far as clock goes, you have a lot of different options. So I have it set up so that it's the syntax is sending MIDI to everything. So that's how it's clocking, is through that. You can also clock internally from the MRCC. It has a clock that it can send to everything. And it also has USB connection to your computer. So your computer can either send or receive clock from the MRCC. So you have a lot of different options. So every different gear setup is different and different amounts of latency, and you want different signal paths different with MIDI, and this kind of allows you to do them all the way you want. And that's one of the reasons why I got it, was because there's a ton of flexibility that it allows. So yes, let's see here, what else? What about the synths of the modular setup that doesn't have MIDI? So the modular setup, so there's two different modular setups. There's the one that I use as my performance setup, which is this one. And the way this is set up is that everything's being clocked from the Octatrack. That's going through a quadra through box, which is over here. One of those signals is going to the Digitact, one is going to the 1010 black box, and the other is going into the Oxy One sequencer. And then the Oxy One has MIDI out and clock out. So I have the clock coming out of that and into my modular. And so that's going into the Pamela's workout, and that's kind of sending out clock to different places as well from there. So it's kind of acting as a MIDI to CV clock converter, which is a handy thing. This does that, and I also used to do it with the black box. The black box has MIDI in and clock out as well. So it's both of those are kind of handy that way. For this setup, the clock is coming out of the Percons, going into the Digitone. And then from the Digitone, there's a through that's coming into the modular over here into a Erica Synths Black MIDI to CV converter. And then the CV clock out is going to the quadranted swarm. And it is also, let's see. Oh no, so that's the only thing for that path, so that I could clock the swarm. The Percons also has a CV, or it has a clock out in the back. And so MIDI clock is being sent through the Digitone to the Erica Synths, which is going to the swarm, and it also has a MIDI through going to the Minotaur, so that's clocking that. And then the clock out from the Percons is coming into the Metron, and that's clocking what's going on here in the sequencer. So a little complicated, but it always kind of is. I did a video, you can check on my channel, there's a video there about MIDI routing, and it sounds a lot more complicated than it is. The one key thing to remember when you're routing MIDI is that it's one way. And I think we're all used to USB, and in a lot of things in computers, not just in music, and USB is two way, so you've got one cable and it can go in two different directions. But MIDI runs kind of the same as audio. So it kind of, flows in one direction. So if you can flow something into a box, into another, through to another, you've kind of got that flow. Or if you can split that flow with a through box, you can take it to multiple destinations. So that's kind of the way these are all run, but everything's going back into the MRCC. So on this side, the Percons is receiving the signal from the MRCC that's coming from the Syntact, and then it's clocking this whole section. In the middle one over there, the Octatrack is receiving the signal from the MRCC, which is coming from the Syntact, and then it's clocking that whole section. And then over on the far side, it's the same with the analog rhythm. So that way, if I don't have Ableton turned on, if I don't want to use the Syntact, I still have these kind of individual sections that I can use to do individual things. Let's see here. Looks like that's about it for questions. If you have any other questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat here, and we will do our best to do my best to get those answered for you. Now, what I'm going to try to do here is just a little bit of kind of showing you how everything works and how it's run. So as I mentioned, so we've got everything gets started once you kind of hit play or on the Syntact. But one of the things that's really key to this whole setup is being able to record stuff. And this was one thing that I really wanted to set up in a certain way. So if you notice, for those of you who use Ableton, every one of the tracks is armed for recording. So now all I have to do is activate recording here, and now it's just waiting for a start signal from the Syntact. So if I hit start on the Syntact now every one of those channels is recording. You see there's nothing recording right now because all of the volume faders are down here. But let's say I bring up volume fader from my workbench, which is the performance setup, which is over here, and we start doing something from that one. Well, now we have, if we zoom in on the workbench one, now we can see that that one's recording, right? So one channel is recording because it was brought up over here. So I can just leave this recording for hours and hours while I mess around in the studio, and then I can come back and everything is multi-tracked out. So let's say I'm doing something and I want to add something from the analog rhythm. I can bring in, you know, a kick or a hat or something like that from the analog rhythm, and I can bring that up here. Right. And then we have that as well going through. So if we go down to the analog rhythm channel, you can see the recording started. It was started before, it was recording nothing, and then it came in as soon as I pushed play on something or push record on something. So you can see we've got stuff coming in and being recorded in this way, which is all just controlled by whatever's brought up and whatever's activated on these different channels. So again, that's kind of the key to everything, is having a setup that can be used quickly and kind of switched on and you know, used the way you want to use it without having to recable, rewire, and do stuff like that. So let's check again. Great looking studio. Thank you very much. I'm super happy with it too. It's like my cozy space to unwind after a long day or week at work. Do you see any noticeable latency with that clocking setup and multi-track recording? So not really. If you may notice that there's some latency when I kind of pulled that up, and you can see on the screen, it's basically only the latency. So because everything's running in through the Model 24, and that's the connection that's taking everything into Ableton, the latency compensation in Ableton for that actually handles it pretty well. So being able to just control it all in one area controls it pretty well. Where there is some noticeable latency that I've had to fix is when I start to do have something running in Ableton. You know, maybe I put a loop that I want to play or something in Ableton, and then I'm trying to sync that with the additional gear that I have here. I have to make sure that those are synced up with, you know, having multiple sources of input. But the MRCC is actually really good about keeping everything really tight, which I love. But it's, you know, everything is tight together, but not necessarily always with Ableton. That has to be compensated for as kind of a function of the audio interface that you're using. And the good thing is once you have that set, whether it's my channel for MIDI or from your audio interface or whatever, once you make all of those individual compensations in Ableton, if you're setting things up as a template, then you just save that as a template, and all you have to do is reopen it, and those things are already set. Generally, the latency isn't going to change dramatically from day to day by machine. It will change from machine to machine, but not necessarily, you know, day to day. So it's something that you can kind of set it and forget it once you have a template. It's kind of the beauty of building a template in Ableton for recording is having something like that. So let's see, what else? I picked up a D-Tact about 10 months ago, quickly became an electron convert. Yeah, me too. I get accused all the time of being an electron fanboy, and I will say I am, but not because, you know, like, it's, you know, my favorite and I'm kind of blind to it. I'm really picky about what gear I keep and actually use. It has to have a place. It has to need to do something unique or special or be the best at something. Otherwise, you know, I'd rather replace it with something that is better, as long as it's something that's kind of within reach. So with the electrons, the electron sequencer and the workflow of being able to parameter lock by step and being able to parameter lock synth and sample editing functions by step is unbelievably powerful. And there's nobody else that does it really well. I mean, and that's why I use so much electron stuff, is because I love the flexibility of that. I get frustrated when I have to be like, oh, okay, now I need to record this in. Now I need to change this manually. Now I need to modulate this with something else, because I can't just lock that parameter to be able to, you know, open the filter cutoff on the third kick of every fourth time through the pattern, you know. And with an electron, you can dial that in with parameter locking and set it. And that's why, for me, I love it. Now, I've gotten asked quite a bit recently why I'm using the Oxy One if I have the electrons. And one of the reasons, actually the main reason of using the Oxy One, is because it does things that the electrons don't do. The most importantly of which is it can generate random CV, so random pitch information, but staying within a key that you set. So, like, for example, I have this set with the root note at C4, and it's set in a Phrygian scale. So anytime I generate any note within this, it will be within that C4 octave of that Phrygian scale, and I can send that information out. I can also generate random stuff. So like if I go into, let's see, a pattern doesn't have anything. I'll just clear this out. So if I go into a pattern here, I can go to my randomization, and I can set how dense I want the notes to be from 1 to 100. So how many notes within the pattern I want, how random I want. So like what kind of a range of notes, be that octave or, you know, within an octave, and then kind of how humanized you want them to be. So how much you want it to kind of slop things. Once you have that set, it's a one touch, and now it creates a random pattern. Those are still within that C4 Phrygian scale. If I do it again, I have a new random pattern. If I do it again, I have a new random pattern. So let me pull this up. I'm gonna try and get my headphones again so you can hear what's going on. And I will bring this up. So as you can hear, we've got a random set of notes that were generated by this, but they're all still within that scale. If I want to generate another one, it's just one touch. And those are all still within that scale. If I like the other ones better, I can go back. If I want to go back to the second one, I can go forward. So you can undo, redo. I can't remember how many times it is, but it's quite a few. So you can generate patterns that are within a scale, and then you can go back and forth between them. Which, with the way I perform, that's really super handy because my performances are all improvised on the spot. So I'll go in with blank sequencers here, I'll generate notes, and then just kind of build something from there. So I think now that I have a little bit of audio, let's show you how that works. So you just heard this just get generated randomly here, which is, there we go. Sorry, fix my headphones here. So yeah, so that was generated randomly. So now I have drum patterns set up on the Octatrack. You know, I always have, you know, kick on one. So in pattern one, it's just a basic pattern that's set up. It's not a track or a song. There's not parts or anything. It's just kick, clap or snare on 2, percussion on 3, 4, 5, closed hat on 6, open hat 7, and ride on 8. And on every pattern, they're all different ones of those. It's different kicks, different hats, different snares, but they're always in the same place. So I always know where to go back to. So if I start this and I want to add it, change up the voice. If I want to generate a new pattern with this one, again, all I have to do is just hit one button. And I can do the same thing with other synths as well. So let's say with the BIA over here, I've got and I can add in some notes. these are the same instruments, but different sounding versions of those same instruments on different patterns. So let's say I just have the kick going. Turn that up just a little bit so you can hear it. And I change to a new pattern. I'm gonna also have a kick there. So you hear how the kick changed up. And so that's a way to transition again, I know where my instruments are on tracks 1 through 8 again. So if I want an open hat, for example, I know it's always going to be on 7. Don't necessarily know which open hat it's going to be, but I trust that I set up a decent open hat. So if I just want to bring that in. And then another kind of cool thing that I love about the Octatrack is, or sorry, with the Electron machines, the Digitac in this case, you can go in then and change up that sound. And then again, being able to change out and have it seem like you're going to a new track when you're actually not going to anything that was pre-prepared as another track. Let's say we go and we just put on just the closed hats. Then I can go in and while I'm using the effects, I can bring in a different synth. And then even change to a different drum pattern if I want to. You just heard the hats change, but it's still a hat, right? And then I can bring in the new kick and just start into a new song, basically. So you can hear, you keep certain elements going through from one song to the next, so that way there's some continuity, almost the same as you would if you were DJing and you filtered out certain elements, but you maybe kept, you know, a melody line, or you kept the bass line, or you kept the kick, or you kept the hat going through so that you can help transition. And that's the way I play live, is I don't have things set up as predetermined tracks where you go from part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, and just kind of move along. I have it set so that I've got an instrument that I can play, but then I'm kind of bringing in and out, not just with muting and unmuting, but by generating new sequences, new elements, and swapping them out for old. So I can bring in one synth, change it out for another synth, and start the transition into a new song, just basically piece by piece, doing it part by part. And so, yeah, that's how this section works. Let's see here if we have some more questions over here. Let's see. Picking up an Octatrack last year converted me. Yeah, and I can tell you, I think I mentioned this to you, Ralph, when we were talking about this. The Octatrack is the most difficult and most convoluted version of Electron. I mean, it's the oldest, it's an older software. And so there's a lot of things that it can't do or that it does in a really clunky way, but there's also a lot of things that nothing else can do because of the way it was set up. So I love it. I couldn't do my live set without it. And with EasyBot's template that he made for it, for the performance mixer side of things, it's pretty amazing. But yeah, it's a cool and interesting machine, but it's a complicated one to set up. What I love about it, as with a lot of other kinds of gear as well, but the Octatrack in particular, even though it's hard to set up, once it's set up, once you decide what you want to do with it, and once you have that set up and configured the way you want, it's very easy to use, and it's not complicated. You kind of set everything, but it's so deep under the hood that getting it set up to do the things you want it to do can be really, really time consuming and complicated. And I think a lot of people that get the Octatrack and end up selling it because they get frustrated by it is because they try to make it do everything that it can do. They say like, oh, it's a groove box. Groove boxes are supposed to do, sampling and music in and MIDI out and effects and all of this stuff and looping and all of that. Well, yeah, the Octatrack does all those things and it does them all pretty well, but trying to get it to do all of those things at once, you end up with just like, this distorted, weird picture of what a groove box is. The way I kind of look at it is like a Swiss Army knife, right? So if you've got the big giant Swiss Army knife that has everything in it, you would never try to use like the spoon and the knife and the toothpick and the corkscrew all at the same time, right? You would use the corkscrew when you need that. You would use the knife when you need that. You would use the spoon when you need that. And the Octatrack for me is very much the same. It does all of those things. And I don't know of any other box that exists that does all of the things that the Octatrack does. There are things that do each one of the things better, but there's nothing out there that does all of the things that it does. So that's one of the things that makes it, I think, really unique, and why it's survived for the last 10 years of being without being kind of overcome, because nobody's come up with a way to do all of the things that the Octatrack does, without it being some giant monstrosity, and I don't even think that exists. So let's see here. Goes so deep. I love how you've crafted a nice compact performance setup that incorporates so many different kinds of sound creation. Yeah, that was with building that, the live setup, that was kind of my main, the two things were it had to be able to have a ton of variety and be able to be kind of played, improvised on live. And it also has to be able to fit into carry-on luggage, because it scares me to death to try and check my gear, especially if I'm taking a long trip. And so, in a week or so, just over a week, I'll be heading to Berlin for Superbooth to play some things over there, and having everything checked on international flights with connections and things like that just scares me to death. So I have it set up now so that the modular case fits into one side of my rolling carry-on, and I've got some foam in there that just kind of pads it. And so the other side can be clothes and toiletries and all that stuff. And then all the other boxes, so the Electron boxes and the Oxy and the black box, those all fit into my backpack, my personal item. So that way everything comes with me on the plane and I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. But I also wanted it to be able to have the ability to do a lot of different things. So here, I'll go back to this one. So if you look at what's in the modular, I have 4 voices. These two over here, the Beehive and the Knit, are both Platts clones, if you're familiar with those, which means that each one of them has 8 synth engines that are kind of melodic, 8 synth engines that are percussive for you to pick from. So you have 16 different sound sources in each of these. So between these two modules, I have 32 different sound sources that are all modulatable that I can choose from during an improvised live performance. Then I have the BIA, which is the only one that kind of, I guess it does one thing, but it does a lot of things. It's such an amazing, synth voice. But it has a bass, alto, and treble, so you can kind of go to different octaves really quickly. And then it has different versions of envelopes, so you can get it to be really super percussive, or you can get it to be kind of more melodic, or kind of droning on and things. And you also have an envelope built in. So it has a ton of flexibility as well. And the newest edition is the Oxy One. Shout out to Manuel at Oxy. You guys have come up with something that is absolutely bonkers, the way this thing works. I just put this into my case about 10 days ago, right before I went out to play in LA. And what's amazing about this is that it is, not only is it 8-note polyphonic, which is cool to have a polyphonic voice, but it's also 8-voice multi-timbral, meaning that it has 10 synth engines in it that are kind of based off of some of the Platts engines and off of that software, but you can sequence them all via MIDI. So I have MIDI coming out of the Oxy One sequencer running into this, and I have one of my channels is set up as on the Oxy. If you're familiar with this, each one of the 4 is a different sequencer, and this one is set up as an 8-track sequencer. So each one of these lines is basically like the 16 steps on an Electron sequencer. So if you think about it, this is 8 of them stacked on top of each other. I have this routed so that each one of these is going to a different voice in the Oxy. So I can sequence 8 different synthesizers from within here, and all of that sound is coming out of that one voice. So that's already a pretty amazing thing. But the other thing that's amazing that the Oxy can do is you can mix and match the multi-timbrality and the polyphony. So let's say you wanted to have, 4 voices that were mono voices. You're using up 4 notes of the polyphony and 4 different voices. But let's say you want the 5th voice to be a 4-note polysynth. You can assign those 4 notes of polyphony to the one voice, so that way you can have that one voice play polyphonically, as well as being able to sequence the other 3 voices and that one independently of one another. And you can mix and match those. So you can have, 7 notes of polyphony if you want, and 7 notes of polyphony and 1 monosynth. You can have, 8 monosynth, or like 6 monosynths and, something with 2 notes of polyphony. You can mix and match it any way you want. So it's absolutely insane. It's just crazy. And they've really made it so that it integrates seamlessly with the Oxy One sequencer, with all of those different things that it can do, because that 8-track synth that I have assigned to, 8-track sequencer that I have assigned to one of the sequencers, you have 4 different sequencers. You can actually make each one of those the 8-track. So via MIDI, you can sequence 32 different tracks of, it could be 32 different synthesizers if you wanted to. And you can kind of split that signal, and the output, you might be saying, well, if you only have 16 channels of MIDI, how can you do that? They have this thing that's called the Oxy Split, which I'll show you what it looks like. This is the Oxy Split, and it's basically, you can enter into it your TRS MIDI in, and then you have 4 different outputs that you can go to, sending out to different things. So you have some DIN MIDI as well as TRS MIDI outputs. And what's the cool thing about that is within the Oxy, you can assign those channels, not just channels 1 through 16, but you have 1 through 16A, 1 through 16B. So you can send out to all different destinations from that same source. So when I get asked why I'm using the Oxy and the Electrons, or why I'm not using one or the other, it's because the Electrons do things that the Oxy doesn't do, and the Oxy does things the Electrons don't do. What the Electrons do that the Oxy doesn't do is because they have built-in internal sounds, whether it's a synth engine in the case of the Syntact, or whether it's a sample engine in the case of the Digitact, they have there's sound design tools that are built into those machines. And those sound design, every one of those parameters can be locked by step in the electron sequencer. Where the Oxy, you can do kind of a version of it, you can assign CC and you can lock CC values, but then you have to go in and assign it and have it receiving and all that kind of stuff. With the electrons, if I just switch voices, I can instantly do it with that. So there's things that each one does. The Oxy is not trying to be a synthesizer, it's only a sequencer, but it can sequence way more things in a really, really super clever way than the electrons can. They're really good at sequencing what's inside the box, and they can sequence other stuff, which is cool as well, kind of like what the Oxy can do, but without the random note generation in key, unless you're talking about the Octatrack, which, before you roast me in the comments, yes, the Octatrack does that. It's the only one that does that. So they're amazingly powerful together, and that's kind of why I have them both being used in the setup. So let's take a look at questions. Also, all improv performer at heart. It's pure freedom. It is. I love it. And I was talking to somebody the other day that's preparing their first live set. Shout out to my friend Cash in Vancouver. Preparing that first live set, he was talking about, well, I want to make sure that, how am I going to transition and what am I going to get ready by track? And I said, honestly, that's why I do improv the way I do. Is for me, the way my mind works, it's more comfortable for me to improvise in the moment and to make something up as I go and to play the instrument live, almost like you would jam on a guitar on stage, than it is for me to try and plan ahead, because I know I'll miss something, I'll forget something, I'll have a connection go wrong, something will happen in the set, I'll accidentally record over something, and then what do? I'm stuck because I had this thing that was planned and a wrench got thrown into it, so now what do? And that fear for me is way bigger than the fear of maybe I can't play the instrument well enough. Like I would rather spend hours and hours practicing the instrument, and I look at my live setup as one instrument. I'd rather spend hours and hours practicing my instrument than spend hours and hours setting something up, because I feel like there's more chance that will go wrong than I'll get, in front of a crowd and I'll forget everything that I learned how to play. Like, it would be like playing guitar and you get up on stage and you forget how to play an E chord, right? So I trust myself to improvise more than I trust myself to prepare, I guess, is the lesson. But to each his own. Like, for some people, they look at me and they're like, you're insane. Like, I would never want to get up in front of people and not have everything already, like, at least have this kind of safety net of something that I could play. But I would rather generate random notes and tweak them as we go and just kind of try to keep the train on the tracks and rolling forward. That's kind of my personal favorite way to do it. Let's see here. John Bryan's greetings from Scotland. Greetings. Wow, that's awesome. All the way from Scotland. Very nice to see you on the other side of the world. Let's see here. In the Digitech, how many patterns do you have available in that project? So you have 16 patterns per project and 16 projects per bank, I think. Let me see, I remember. Yes. Yeah, so you have 16 patterns per bank, and you have 16 banks per project. I said it backwards, but yeah, so you have 16 and 16. So you can do that. I basically will play, because those are drum kits for me, purely drum kits. They're not songs. And if you think about it, think about any artist you like, whether it's a techno producer or a live act, they're not playing different instruments on every track, especially not drums, right? So going back to like the live music thing, AC/DC goes to play, they don't swap out their kick drum between songs. They have their sound, their kick drum. If you listen to, a techno producer, whether it's Rodhad or whether it's, Amelie Lenz or whoever it is, they have their sounds that they like to stick to. And I kind of look at it the same way in my live performance. I don't want too many changes. I want a lot of possibilities to modify and adapt, but not too many things to choose from. I like that foundation, that especially the drum foundation. I like to have it be, kind of a basis that I can kind of stick to and I know what it is. I'm in the process right now of kind of revamping a bit how I'm going to organize my set. And one thing I'm doing is I'm making all of my drum kits and patterns go from kind of less dynamic, less energy to more dynamic and more energy. So no matter what slot I'm playing in the night, I can improvise at the right kind of level of what I'm playing without having to go in and tweak and fix everything. So if it's an earlier on set and I want some more subtle kicks and I want, some more delicate sounding instruments, I can have those in one section. And then if it's like, peak time, everybody going absolutely crazy and I want these kind of like super distorted, overdriven kick drums, cool, I have those later on. And so I'm trying to organize that for myself so I don't have to think too much while I'm performing. I just kind of know the farther to the right it is, the more mellow it is, the farther to the left it is, the more kind of dynamic and aggressive it is. Let's see, after seeing your use of the Octatrack, I might use it the same way. It's brilliant use and sounds great. Easy Bont's template, yes. So that, you answered Rolf's thing. Yes, that template that is in there right now, it's actually like 5 versions ago because I really like this one and I'm too nervous to upgrade and change things at this moment, but I'm going to at some point soon. I was actually talking with Matthew with EasyBot when we were both out in LA. We played a show together out there a couple weeks ago and we were talking about the template and he just came out with a new version of the techno template, which is great. And he's an absolute like genius when it comes to making up custom effects in the Octatrack. Any of us can do it. It's almost like this open platform that we could all do it if we wanted to, if we could, but like 99.9% of the world can't, and he can, which is great. So that's why I use his template rather than trying to reinvent the wheel. I love it. So shout out to Matthew for making an amazing performance tool. See, even more with the new firmware. Oh yeah, that's right. I totally forgot about that with all the FM stuff. So yeah, it's not just 16 voices. There's actually a lot more. Where do you get your ideas from? So I'm not exactly sure what you're asking, but I'll do my best to answer. I get my ideas from, I guess the easiest answer is from listening to music, but really it's from, I've been DJing for the better part of 3 decades. I stopped DJing about a year and a half ago when I decided to, instead of trying to do DJ and live, I just wanted to do live performance. But I've been producing and DJing for a really long time. And the idea of doing live performance was because I wanted to combine those 2 things together. I wanted to basically create a show where I'm producing live on stage for people as kind of a soundtrack to the night. And so a lot of where I get my ideas about how I'm gonna bring things in, bring things out, how I'm gonna do build-ups and breakdowns and all that kind of stuff comes from DJing for a long time and just knowing that, okay, now, it feels like the crowd needs more of this, or they need a break, or they need more energy, or they need a vocal, or they need whatever. So you can kind of feel that vibe from the crowd. And I carried that over into the live performance side, but in a much more detailed way, because there, if you feel like, the crowd needs a vocal, I have to find a track that has a vocal that I like, or maybe I have a stem that I have, or an acapella, and then I have to put it in at the time that I want to make sure that it's, that it's set correctly, make sure that it's on time, make sure that it's whatever. With this, I have some vocals, and if I just want to bring in a vocal, I can just bring in a vocal. And I can kind of reinvent the song I'm playing in the middle of playing the song. Like I could be playing some banging hard techno song and then during the breakdown bring in like a Donna Summer disco vocal if that's what I wanted to do. And it's much more difficult from a selection standpoint to do that when you're playing tracks that are already remade, because you have to kind of you have to line up the different elements that the different producers have done in their tracks to make them make sense. With this, I'm producing it, so I can just like make it in the moment. So even though it may seem more complicated, for me, it's actually much, much easier because I can kind of go in and do exactly the thing I want to do rather than having to find the right song. Let's see here. 8 banks per project. Okay, thanks. Yeah, I only use one bank. I don't even use all 16 patterns in that one bank, so I always forget because it's not my workflow. Let's see. It seems you're only limited by one's imagination, so very interesting and fascinating. This is a great educational watch for me. I could listen to you all day long. Thanks. Awesome. I appreciate that. I mean, I started this a long time ago, or not a long time ago, during COVID as kind of a project because I wanted to develop a live performance thing, like I said, to put together production and DJing into a live act. And so I started doing that during COVID. And as I was trying to find ways to learn, I turned to YouTube like everybody else does. And I was looking and trying to find certain ways to doing things, and I just wasn't finding it. And so a lot of stuff I had to learn on my own. And then I said, you know what? I'm just gonna start posting videos on the things I learned, because if I'm looking for it, I'm sure somebody else is. And that was kind of the beginning of this whole channel. You know, I didn't start this to kind of be a YouTuber and review gear and do all that stuff. I wanted to be the source of information that I couldn't find myself for other people. And so that's kind of been the method behind this the whole way along. And thanks to everybody who supported the channel. I think we're closing in on 7,000 subscribers, which still blows my mind. But it's cool that people like you get something out of this, because that's the whole point. Like, I love this. I love making music. I love producing music. I love performing music. I love all of it. And I want to help other people experience that same thing, because it's just a blast. And so the more the merrier. Let's get everybody doing this stuff, because it's just so much fun. So I'm glad. Thank you very much for saying that. Do you repatch your modulars during a live show? Usually no. I like to kind of set it up so that it can be kind of tweaked and done as it is. But sometimes, every once in a while, I get an idea. I have in the, here, I'll show you over here. You can't see it super well. Here, the overhead's better. So I have, if you look in the PEMS workout, like this, for example, this one down here is doing a bunch. I have a second one up here, and I only have one thing coming out of this right now. So I've got 7 empty modulation sources. So there'll be times in a show where I'll get an idea, and I've always got some patch cables sitting there with me. So I may just plug that in and patch something really quick and quickly throw out, you know, a random CV, or throw out a polymetric pattern, or like something that is cool, but it's set up to be able to do that. So that's why all those empty spaces are there. Otherwise, that would be a total waste of space. But yeah, that's sometimes I do, but for the most part, no. I kind of leave it the way it is, unless I come up with some kind of cool idea in the middle of a show. Let's see, do you use a compressor or any other kind of warming unit? Yes. Here, let's see. Sorry, get you the right look. You probably won't be able to see this, but, well, here, I can show you with this camera. Let me switch back to this one. So with the live setup, you see it's kind of elevated, and if you look down underneath, there is an electron analog heat. And I have one preset that I made for the heat that I really like. I love the way it sounds, the way it kind of warms up and kind of finishes the sound, especially if I'm playing a show that has DJs that are playing mastered tracks. I love to be able to have my stuff not all of a sudden, you know, drop in level and sound super thin and hollow. So this, the way I use the heat, I put a little bit of saturation to kind of help fill out the spectrum. I put a high pass filter on the master, but I bring it down to about 20 hertz or so, 22 hertz, and then I add some resonance. So it gives you a resonant boost. So it gives you a low end bass boost at about 35, 40 hertz. So it just gives it some extra kind of thickness and rumble on the bottom. Yeah, and then to compensate for having extra on the bottom, I also add some a little bit of a high-end boost to kind of balance it out so it's not all low end. And then it keeps it from getting too muddy because there's nothing really boosted in the middle. That kind of comes back down and you just hear it the way it is. And then there's some drive added. And so that's really it. And I save that as a preset and I stick it down underneath there where I can't even see it or touch it, and just kind of let that go. And that gives me that kind of thickness in the end. I can actually show, you might enjoy this. So if I'm playing something from here, so what we were just messing around with before, if I go in and I turn off the heat, you'll hear what it sounds like. And that's not just a volume difference. A lot of that's drive. It's perceived volume. So I'll A-B it again. So you can really hear how not only does it give it that kind of drive and boost, but it really thickens up the low end. And that was what I was looking for, because on a club sound system, a modular can sound super thin if you don't have it actually kind of thickened out in some way. I'm actually probably in a few weeks when I get back, I have some travel coming up, but when I get back from that, I'm planning on doing a video where I talk just about kind of end of chain for live performance. There's a bunch of options that have come out recently that are pretty cool. I love the analog heat and I've been using it for a while. I will say it took me a while to get it because I kept hearing from people that it was great and you'll love it, whatever. And I was like, yeah, but it's a lot of money for something that just does one thing. And so finally I found one used, I kind of broke down and got it. And as soon as I plugged it in the first time, I was like, okay, I totally get this now. Like it instantly changed the sound like night and day. So having that has made a huge difference for my live performances. So yeah, it's pretty amazing. But there's a lot of other cool ones that are out there now as well. Universal Audio just came out with a new guitar pedal that's an emulator of 3 of their classic compressors, like 1176 and a couple others I don't remember. But that's kind of a cool idea because it's in a really small form factor. It can emulate some really amazing compressors. And so you can get that, have that be your end of chain if you're looking for compression. The analog heat doesn't have a compressor on it. So it's just really saturation, distortion, all of that stuff. So it's cool. Another one that's great is the Auto Boom. If you can find one, they're always sold out all the time. And that seems to be a kind of piece of gear for choice for people that are looking for end of chain. And then when I was just at NAMM, I saw Endorphins, the company that does modular Eurorack modules. They had this unit that was a Eurorack unit that was called the Golden Master, and it was basically kind of an end of chain module that would go in your Eurorack system, and they just made that into a guitar pedal. So now you've got this this kind of mastering chain, end of chain guitar pedal that's super flexible that you can put on your thing and take it with you. In a mobile way, which is really super cool. They also showed it down. They have 2 guitar pedals they just came out with. The other one is the Ghost effects module that they did. They put out last year sometime that I have in my modular case. Absolutely phenomenal effects module. Like, it's crazy what it does. Here, I'll show you an example of what this one does. So just take that basic sound. So this is just a basic sound from the BIA, right? That's what that sounds like without anything else. But I have it on a send going through the Ghost, and the Ghost has delay, reverb, filter, distortion, compressor. The filter is high pass, low pass, so it's kind of DJ style. It's got resonance, and then the volume also has an overdrive on it. So you have all that, and you can run them in sequence. And you can, by hitting this button, you can change up. You have different settings for what sequence they run. So is it delay into reverb into filter? Is it delay through distortion into reverb? Like, so you can really have a lot of flexibility again when you're performing. But just listen to this, just this random pattern, and I'll just add in the ghost just without touching anything on it. And then you can start tweaking stuff on the ghost. So if you just change the filter a tiny bit, added a little more reverb. Take the reverb out. Distortion. It's also important to note that the ghost is being clocked that's what's actually coming out of the Pamela's workout. It's clocking this, so the delay is clocked on that, which is great because then you can do divisions of that. You can change up the delay while you're performing. All of this is also modulatable. I love to be able to kind of touch it and move it and change it, but if you wanted to have something that just modulated on its own, that would be a great chance to grab a cable, have a source out of here, plug it into there, and you've got something being modulated right away if you kind of like the way it sounded or if you wanted to change something up. Another cool thing this has too, I'm not using it because of the way I have things wired, but it also has a side chain. So you can have a trigger in for your side chain, and then you can dial in the amount of side chain compression that the compressor gives on the Ghost. So again, super, super powerful module. And it's one that they just made in the form of a guitar pedal. So if you're not into modular, but you want that that amazing effects unit, now you can get it as a Eurorack pedal. And they actually set it up for guitar players as well. So there's certain functions that it doesn't have and certain things that it does as well. And it's got it's like a stomp box. So it's got like foot switches. So you can use it as a desktop or use it as a stomp box. So I heard some people jamming on guitars through it. Actually, while I was at their booth, at Super Booth, the guitarist for Marilyn Manson just wandered up and just started rocking playing through their pedal, which was pretty sweet. But yeah, it sounds phenomenal. So between the Ghost and the Golden Master, I think they have two like really, really cool options for outboard effects and end of chain. Let's see here. The closest that we will ever get to what's going on inside your head is through the music at the moment in time when you're playing live. It's a journey, absolutely 100%. And that was, I talked about this on another video, but I heard something that was really inspirational to me when I was kind of getting into live performance this way, live techno performance, was that they were saying that live performance, live techno performance in particular, is a conversation between you and machines. And you're also translating that conversation as if it was a different language. You're translating it for the crowd that's in the room at that time so that they can participate in the conversation as well. So you feel the vibe from the crowd. It gives you an idea. So you do something with the machine. But the way I have my live rig set up, it's set up so that the machine has something to say as well. So like you heard just with the Ghost, it does things that I don't have any control over. So it's kind of cool that you can just put it through there and have it just go, wow, this is just amazing. It's doing things that I would never think to do if I was, setting up settings individually. And the same thing with the Oxy sequencer, as far as generating random notes. That's the machine's part of the conversation. With the electrons, they're really great at probability and conditional triggers that you can enter in, and that's again the machine's part of the conversation. And then your part is what you do with it, how you tweak it and control it, and when you bring it in and what levels you put it at and how you change the voicing that it's going through or things like that. So it gives you, it really is a two-way conversation, and together you and the machines are creating an atmosphere for the night, a soundtrack for the night, for the people. And it's one of the reasons that it's one of the main things that I really love about this is that it's not like when I was DJing, where your idea is to select the right track for the right moment with the crowd. And the conversation between the human and the machines already happened with the producer in the studio. And so that song may fit the mood perfectly, but it wasn't made for the moment, even if it fits the moment. When you're performing live and it's improvised and you're really having that conversation with you and the machines, it's that song you're playing is made for the moment, and it's made in the moment using the energy and the vibe from the crowd that's in the room at that moment. And so it can't be any more personal than that. And one of the things I love about it, and one of the reasons why I decided to start performing this way, was I love the idea that a live performance that I would do would be a one-off. Like it's a moment in time. If you weren't there, you missed it, and it's not gonna happen again. I'm not gonna build a set that I play for 6 months every single day, and then I'm gonna build another set, and then I'm gonna play it every day for 6 months. For me, I can't do that. For me, I set out to do this in a way that made it so that every performance was totally unique of the one before and the one after. I remember that years ago, I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember this, but like when the Grateful Dead were a huge thing and they were touring all the time, people would trade cassette tape recordings or buy and sell or trade with each other of individual shows that they went to, because even though they were playing stuff that was known, they were a jam band. So they were, this song might be 5 minutes long in one show and 40 minutes long in another show. And so if you weren't there, you missed it. And so people started recording those so they could trade them and say, oh, you had to hear this song in this venue on this date. And you would see the cassettes and they were just like, Alpine Valley, January 1983 or whatever. And so then it was like, oh, that was that show. And I always loved that idea and kind of transferring that into the electronic world, into the techno world, and saying, because techno music for me is very much a music of, it's a soundtrack for the night. It's in the background, but it's also driving the energy, but it's also feeding off the energy of the night. Where a lot of other styles of music, when you go to a club night, for example, you go to a commercial top 40 like Vegas club night, the idea of those nights is to play the songs that people know so that they can get excited and say like, oh, I love this song. This is my favorite one. I know all the words. I'm going to sing along with it. And that creates one kind of atmosphere. And it's very much an atmosphere of like, it's a really high energy, and then you kind of stay there at that high energy. And you can only do that for a couple hours at a time, and then you just need a break. You need to go do something else. Where with a techno party, it can go all night long or sometimes days. And the idea is to have things go up and down and fit the mood and be part of it. And now DJs can do that by having different DJs play different parts of the night, or really skilled DJs can play different styles and feel the mood and mix things up totally. So I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is that the music it serves a different purpose. When it's, when you go to a club to hear your favorite song, that serves that purpose and it makes you happy and it gets you excited. When you go to a club to hear a song you've never heard before, but to experience a vibe and a feeling that's produced by the music, that's a totally other one. And that was kind of what I've always been going at with what I do here. So yeah, so that's a lot of blah, blah, blah about stuff. Maybe we'll do some music. So what I'll show you now is, move this camera over here. I love this little mobile camera action so that I can just kind of move things around and be like, all right, let's shoot from this angle now. Okay, I need to plug in this or the live stream will come to a screeching halt. So, yeah. So what I'm going to do is show you a little bit. So I showed you how this setup works. I'm going to come over to this setup for a little bit, and then the setup over there for a little bit. You know, a couple minutes at a time, so you can hear how each one's different and unique, but how each one kind of works as a full, complete thing. And then I'll show you a little bit about how I would use them all in kind of a jam production scenario. So I'm going to switch over to this one so you can see. So let's bring up these instruments. So we've got what else do I have over there? Oh, there we go. Hopefully these levels aren't crazy right now. So anyway, so as you can see, because we started things a while ago, everything's still playing and it's all still in sync with all the machines. And just so you know too, Ableton is still recording as well, which is great. It's recording empty space now, but as soon as we start playing something, it's recording that. So if all of a sudden a cool idea happens, I can always go in and use that idea to build out into a track. Or with my live setup, I have the 1010 black box set up so that it can play some loops. And it's playing, I have it basically set up so that it can it's like launching clips in Ableton. You just hit play and it'll play that loop and it'll keep it going. And I use that for, background atmospheres and longer vocals and things like that. So I can just kind of hit it, it plays, and I can keep doing something else. And I don't have to dive into menus to make that happen. So what's cool with this setup is that if I am jamming while I'm recording something, if something comes out of that, some weird line of something out of the modular happens, I can go back into that recording, chop out that little piece, load it in the black box, and use it in my next live set. So it becomes a really kind of organic and always changing thing that I'm making stuff in studio that I can use, but I'm not making tracks that I'm just going to play the track. Another thing too, I didn't touch on this before, but all the drums that are in the Digitakt, those are all made on the analog rhythm using layering of samples and drum synth engines. And once those get layered up and you come up with a sound that you like, you can resample it into a new one-shot sample, and then I just load those in the Digitakt because it's smaller and I can take it with me, but still have the sound that I love from the rhythm. So anyway, enough talking. So these are all kind of set up right now. Everything's kind of down and muted, but so you've got, again, drums coming from here from the Percons, and 4 tracks. If you're not familiar with this, it's 4 voices, but you can do a lot of the same sequencing stuff that you can do on the Electrons. So you can parameter lock any parameter that's on here, you can parameter lock. So like if you hold record and hold down a step and turn a knob, you can record in that that modulation that you do into modulation lanes. So it's kind of like you would in Ableton, where you might want to record in some modulation. You would record it in using a controller. With this, you can do it right here internally. And the voices are pretty cool. The thing I love about it too is the way that you kind of save presets on this. So you've got, so it saves note and pattern separately, or save sound and pattern separately or together, which gives you, again, flexibility. Common theme of everything we're talking about is flexibility. So if you go into the kits, you can save the kit, which is the parameters of the sounds that you have. If you go into pattern, you can save the pattern. So like right now, if we go out of this and let's just say like, so that was just kind of some random pattern that I was playing around with before. So let's say I like this, let's say I like the pattern, but I don't like the sounds. I can just go into kit and hit a different kit, and it changes up the sounds. I can go to a different kit, and back to the other one. And let's say I like the kit, but I don't like the pattern, I can go to a different pattern. And this pattern was saved with the kit, but if I want to change that kit up again, So it's super cool how you can save those separately or together and mix and match them that way. It's one of the things I love about the Percons, one of the things that makes it really super performative. So anyway, this is kind of the drum machine action from over here. So let's just get that dialed in just a little bit. And then we have this set up over here. So we've got, it's controlling another kind of drum percussion module, which is the Endorphins Queen of Pentacles. So I can go in and just kind of start creating some cool different random patterns on here. Timing right. And then we've got some other instruments to choose from. So let's see, we've got it's on 9. So that gives you an idea of this kind of random mishmash of things. This was just put together over the last like day or two. So everything is kind of, the levels are all kind of weird and stuff. But the idea is it's supposed to be just an idea generation machine rather than something that's kind of like finished and polished and, you know, ready for prime time. So it's kind of the idea of the live set is what people get to see, and the setup that I was just playing on, that's kind of more for me for generating ideas, for coming up with things that I can then maybe record, maybe I can save, maybe not. But again, they're all kind of recording into Ableton now. So if there was something cool and I go back and listen to it, it's like, wow, that's amazing. Like, I love that piece. I'm going to take that one tiny little section out of this 4 hours of making music, and I'm going to use that in my live set. So that way I can kind of come up with the ideas. I always kind of look at it like you're making your own loop packs rather than going on Splice and spending hours, or Loop Masters or whatever, spending hours trying to find the right sound. You just make sounds until you find the right ones, and you just kind of pull them out, and those are your loops that you use either to produce a track or play live or whatever. Before I go on to the next section, just gonna go back here to the chat really quick. Is the Octatrack the only effect machine with the EasyButs template, or also, is the Octatrack only an effect machine with EasyButs template, or also add patterns to it? So you can, you still have the ability to MIDI sequence from it. And it, depending on which version of it, you also have two tracks that you can use for playing samples. But again, go back to what I said before, where the Octatrack becomes, you know, a monster is when you try to get it to do too many things at once. Right now, it's a performance mixer, so it's summing all the sound, it's got all of those assignable effects, and it has, you know, the output that goes out through the heat to the main. That's what I'm using it for right now. If I want to mess with samples on it, I'm going to do that separately, and I'll use something else as my performance mixer. Or if I want to make it as a drum machine instead of the Dig Attack, can totally do that. But I'm not going to try to make it be a looper, a sampler, a drum machine, and a performance mixer and effects unit, all that at the same time, because you just end up not only with a ton of brain damage, but you also end up with something that doesn't work very well, and it becomes like this menu divey horrible nightmare. Whereas because you're constantly trying to reconfigure while you play, where if you configure it to do a thing, like the idea of the Swiss Army knife, you open up the knife blade and you cut something, you close the knife blade. You open up the corkscrew, you open a bottle and you close the corkscrew. You don't try to use all those pieces at the same time. Let's see here. 100% totally agree with your response to my earlier comment and also the detailed explanation. Awesome, thank you. I'm glad you liked it. Hey, what's going on? Ooh, the Percons, yes, it is a ton of fun, and that's why I move stuff around so that I could play it out there. Does your Percons also have some MIDI issues? Mine seems to forget how to start the sequencer via MIDI sometimes. The voice buttons also stop working for some reason. I have not experienced any of that. The only thing the voice button thing might be, and this was a little bit to get used to at first, when you change kits, the knobs and the switches have nothing to do with the sound that's playing right then. So all of a sudden, it might not be working correctly because you can set it up. You may have it configured the same way that I have it, which is it's on catch mode or hook mode. I can't remember what they call it, where let's say one setting is at 2 o'clock. And when you switched into that, the knob was at 10 o'clock. Well, you can move it all around here below that area and nothing will change until you get to 2, and then it hooks it. And then it becomes the thing that what you're trying to do. So check that it's not that, because these aren't kind of infinite encoders. They're, they have a position, an actual position. So double check that it might be that. What is that little mixer he has above the Octatrack? Okay, that little mixer is, go over here, see if I'm showing the right thing, yes. So this mixer right here is a WMD performance mixer from WMD Modules. And it's basically an 8-track mixer the tracks can either, like the first 6 can either be 2 mono inputs or 1 stereo input, and they're switchable back and forth. Has 2 sends and returns, and that's what these aux buttons are here, so you can send it nowhere or to 1 or 2, and then you can dial in how much you send, and then you've got panning. And the other cool thing, one of the reasons why I bought this was because it has a cue mix, because what I thought I was gonna do when I originally was getting started with this was I thought I was gonna cue like a DJ with my headphones out of this mixer. So I wanted to write a track on the BIA while something else was playing, so I could hear it in my headphones, and then once I was done, I could fade it in. Right? But what I realized quickly was that while I was doing that, while I was writing the track in my headphones, I wasn't paying attention to what was going on in the room. I wasn't paying attention to the vibe. I wasn't paying attention to the people. I just would get into my own world of like tweaking stuff, and all of a sudden something would just be looping forever while I was trying to come up with the perfect bass line. And so I said, you know what? I'm just gonna take that step out of it completely, and I'm gonna trust the process, and I'm just gonna generate some random notes, and I'm gonna throw those out there, and I'm going to get things rolling from there. So let's see. What is up here? I was talking about the voice buttons for playing the sound, mute, unmute, and so on. Fortunately, there's a reset function in the menu, which makes them work again. No, I have not had that problem at all. So sorry about that, but maybe it's your individual thing. I don't know if you've updated firmware or what, but no, I haven't experienced any of that yet, thankfully. Hopefully I don't start experiencing that, but yeah, I haven't yet. All right, cool. So let's see one thing. Let's move over to the other side. So this setup over here, set up kind of very much like the one on the other side. So there's synths and a drum machine, so you can kind of jam on stuff here. Analog Rhythm, my absolute favorite drum machine, bar none in the entire world. This is if I had to sell everything in this room, this would be the last thing that I sold. It's this and the Octatrack, I think, would be the last thing I sold. But yeah, it's amazing. So I have this set up, so it's got some drum patterns in it as well, so if I want to kind of knock an idea out. And then the SH101 has a built-in sequencer, but it's kind of clunky to use, and you don't have a ton of control over it. So I'm actually sequencing that. The Analog 4 has CV and gate outputs, so this is actually sequencing this. So it allows me to play, let's see here. So that's a sequence coming from the Analog 4, but playing. And so I can get a sequence going with this, and then if I like something like that, then I can go back in and start going back into my drums here. Bring up the rhythm. How's that? Yeah, I figured that was going to kill my volume here. Still clipping a little here. Take that down a little bit so I don't crush everybody's ears. All right, take that down just a little. Is that a little better? Let's see. Yeah, not clipping anymore. Hopefully that wasn't too painful for everybody. So, and if I want to make this longer. All right, so again, just gives you a little bit of an idea of how that setup works. So the idea being, I've got 3 independent setups that each can be used kind of as their own for coming up with ideas in the moment without having to, overly think and connect and come up with, something different and new to play. The cool part about it as well, and as I mentioned before, the way everything's routed, it's all synchronized all together. So if something comes up and I'm playing something in one section and I really love that thing and I want to add in something else to it and I've got that somewhere else, I can do that. So, as an example, I'll put this back up here so you can see kind of the whole room. So, like if I'm playing something over here, and I want to add a drum to that. So let's say I've got this going and I like that there, but I want to add, you know, the hi-hat from the percons that I really like. So I can bring that in. And then let's say I want to add in the clap from the rhythm. And then let's say I want to add in something from the swarm. And then let's say I wanted to add a vocal that I have in my setup over here. All right, so that gives you an idea.
Rhythms.
Vocal stays playing. Yeah, so that gives you an idea about how everything kind of works together as one thing, or that it can work separately as different things. It just kind of depends on what you want to do with it. So again, that goes back to the way I set up the studio was with the idea that I wanted everything to be super playable, creative, have these little areas that I could create if I wanted to just sit down at one thing and make some sounds and create something. But also if I wanted to do something all together and record it in, that should be as easy as possible with no friction. And the whole thing was really designed to have no friction. That was the whole point of this, is to have everything set up in a way that it was easy to just get in here, sit down and start making music rather than having to focus too much on everything else that's going on. So if you've got other questions, pop those in the chat. We'll go for just a few more minutes and then I'm gonna jam a little bit at the end and then we'll call it after a couple hours here. If you're, these videos, I'm gonna be doing these live streams. I'll be doing these kind of every once in a while when I'm not traveling for work or show or something and I don't have something going on with family or something like that. I'll try and squeeze one in. So they're gonna be random and all over the place. So it's not gonna be like a regularly scheduled, like every Saturday at noon, we're gonna do this. So if you'd like to know when the next one's coming up, subscribe and hit the bell so that way as soon as I post that I'm gonna do one, you'll get a notification that says there's gonna be one of these, so that way you can make plans to check it out. And if you don't wanna check it out live, you can always go and once this is finished, it'll be set up on YouTube. It kind of rolls over as a regular video. And it's kind of cool too, because you can also watch the chat. So if there was questions that came up and a response in the chat or something, you'll be able to see what that is, which is also pretty cool. So yeah, let's see what else. Oh, the only other thing that I didn't really mess with with all of this stuff is the Polybrute. It's my one polyphonic synth that I use. I mean, other ones can play polyphonically, but that's the one like true polysynth that I have. Because I'm not much of a keyboard player and I'm not all of that, I have it for making amazing, beautiful sounds and doing huge pads and things like that. But it's not, I am not somebody who's gonna play that beautifully. I can sound design on it beautifully, which is what I have it for. So I can show a little something on that first. So let's kind of go back to what we were doing. connect. So again, just a quick idea of how that works.
Rhythms.
Yes, I know. Rhythms. All right. So quick idea how that works as well. So again, as I mentioned, everything's connected together. Everything works together as an individual or as a whole room, performance room. But it also, everything works together, works as individuals as well. So the idea being that it can be useful and productive. One last thing too is that the Syntact, which I'm controlling everything from on my desk, one of the things that I love about that, and I did a whole video about it that you can watch on my channel, for me the most powerful thing about the Syntact is that you can flip the tracks from being audio tracks to MIDI tracks. So you've got, you can take that with you. So like when I go on a work trip, I can take the Syntact with me with my headphones and I can make stuff up using the synth engines that are in it. And then when I get back to the studio, I just plug it in and through the MRCC, I can flip those tracks to MIDI tracks and I can send any of those things out to any of these synths that are in this room. And so what's so crazy powerful about that is that you're not, you can use it as a tool to write, like a sketch pad, but then you're not just limited to what that can do because of its connectivity. I got a bunch of heat a while ago because I posted a video when the OP1 field came out and they were like, oh, you're ripping on it and you're a hater. And it's like, no, I was just saying it's not useful for me because that's my workflow. If I want something portable that's a sketch pad, I want to be able to sketch it. And then when I get back into the studio, connect it to all this gear effortlessly so that I can then use it all. And the MIDI out implementation on the OP1 and the OP1 field is just atrocious and it's a nightmare to try and get it to work. And I just like when things just work. So this way I can write stuff on a sketch pad like the Syntact or like the Deluge or even the Dirty Wave Mates, like those things that have good MIDI implementation. Then I can come back in, I can send out the MIDI to other stuff and just record that track right straight into Ableton. And it's instantly something that's usable for me rather than having to fight with it all the time, which I'm not a big fan of. So anyway, enough blah blah about stuff. So that's how I use my setup, that's how I use my gear, that's how the studio is set up. If you have any other comments or questions or anything, please leave those in the comments of the video once it posts to YouTube, and I'm happy to answer them, or you can hit me up on Instagram or whatever, send me a message if you have a question, and I'm always happy to answer if I know the answer, and if not, I'll point you in the right direction of somebody that I think would be better at it or that would know the answer better for you. So yeah, so thanks very much. I appreciate you guys tuning in for the video, and hope to see you the next time around. And in the meantime, take care of each other and have tons of fun making music. Thanks, guys.